let's get reaction on that story now. Cosatu has laughed off the former PIC CEO's allegation that it forced him to resign. Former CEO Dan Matjila took to the stand at the inquiry this morning to start his testimony and to answer so many questions that have been raised around him at that PIC inquiry over the last couple of months. For reaction now, we're joined via Skype by Cosatu's Matthew Parks. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. Now, I've just been handed a press release that Cosatu has just sent out, and not in reaction to what Matjila has already said in the morning session at the PIC inquiry, but it is in response to what's claimed to be leaked parts of what's expected to be his testimony at the inquiry. And just for me to get the reaction to you, let me just read from, there's a piece published by Bloomberg, and they say here, they speak about a specific email that a senior official of the Congress of the South African Trade Unions, that's you, emailed the chairperson of the PIC, this article says, who was also Deputy Finance Minister at the time. Matjila wrote that unless the Deputy Minister wrote that unless the PIC supported the rescue, the Labour Federation wouldn't be able to encourage its members to vote for the ruling ANC party in the May elections. That article goes further to say that Matjila is expected to say he was removed at least partly to ensure that the EDCON rescue could take place. He cited the email from Cosatu's parliamentary coordinator, one Matthew Parks, as evidence. Mr. Parks, your response to that?
Look, I think two things. The easier one is Matjila's allegation that somehow Cosatu forced him to resign. Look, we're happy to claim his scalp if he somehow believes we are to blame for his resignation, but it doesn't make chronological sense. He resigned on the 23rd of November 2018. Cosatu only got involved and aware of EDCON deal late January 2019. We wrote to the Deputy Minister of Finance, as the article says, in February. So how would an email in February 2019 lead to somebody resigning 3 months before? So look, I think Dan Matjila is clearly under pressure. He was a CEO of the PIC for many years. There was a constant avalanche of serious allegations of corruption, dubious investments worth billions of rands, which are wasting workers' money, allegations of the collapse of good governance. And this was in the media. It forced the president to appoint a judicial commission of inquiry. So this is under Dan Matjila's watch. He must explain. We're glad the commission is calling him to account, because this is workers' money that has been looted under his watch. Either he's spectacularly corrupt or he's amazingly incompetent, one of the two. But if he wants to claim it's us and our campaign as Cosatu to force corrupt people to leave government, and we somehow forced him to do so, we're happy to claim that victory. In terms of the EDCON issue, we have been very open from the day one. Our mandate as Cosatu is to protect our workers' jobs. We have 40,000 workers who work at EDCON, retail workers. We have 100,000 clothing workers and other factory workers who work in factories which supply EDCON. This was a joint package between the banks, the shopping centers, the Unemployment Insurance Fund, where Cosatu sits, to save EDCON. And our mandate as Cosatu was to save these 140,000 jobs. That is a mandate of the Unemployment Insurance Fund. We were very open about it. And we wrote not only to the Deputy Minister of Finance, but we wrote to other ministers involved. We even engaged the President of the Republic to say, as Cosatu, we want to do everything within the parameters of the law, everything financially viable to save our workers' jobs. We're not apologetic about doing so. In fact, it's not a secret. We even issued statements throughout our engagements to say we are engaging with government to save these workers' jobs. We've done it before, we'll do it again. And we're proud that we did that role. We could not as a society afford to see 140,000 of the most vulnerable and most poor workers go unemployed. It was a difficult deal. Everybody made compromises and sacrifices, but it is a deal that is well done, and one that was backed not just by Cosatu, but by the banks, by the shopping centers. It passed the scrutiny of the Unemployment Insurance Fund's board. It passed the scrutiny of the PIC's investment criteria. It wasn't anything unusual in that regard.
Now, Matthew, if I could come in there. Matjila has already spoken repeatedly now already, and you can see the point that he's trying to make about why he feels the chairperson of the PIC, which is the Deputy Finance Minister, should not be hands-on involved in the investment committee. You spoke about this when you gave your testimony at the PIC inquiry. Remind us again why Cosatu went to those lengths of eventually reaching out to the Deputy Finance Minister, the chairperson of the PIC, in your work to try and make sure that this EDCON rescue package was pushed through.
Sure. Look, for number one, is that we had 140,000 workers' jobs on the line. We had engaged with them because the UIF board had met in January. The deal was approved. It met all the investment criteria. The banks were fine that there was a safe and a logical return on its investments. The deal was above board, but we had to chase the PIC. The PIC, it was almost a comical circus. The board wasn't available to meet because they had members overseas. The board didn't send a notification to its members to sit. The investment committee didn't want to meet. So all we engaged with government to do was to say, can you at least go through the required processes? You can still rule against us, it's fine, but at least go through the processes. And the reality was that we didn't have the luxury of time. Edcon was running out of money literally within days. And the PIC guys were taking about a month to go through the processes. So there wasn't the simple luxury to say, well, we'll wait for a few months for the PIC to get its act together. The other critical point to make, which people like Dan Matjila and others, government and business often forget, is that the PIC doesn't own that money. That money is public servants' pension funds, it's workers' unemployment insurance, it's workers' injury on duty insurance. It is workers' money, and workers wanted to use it to save workers' jobs. It is a form of solidarity by workers to help other workers. It is also costed by the Unemployment Insurance Fund to be a more financially viable intervention for them as the UIF to invest this 1.2 billion rand in saving Edcon. It is a cheaper way to do it than to have 140,000 workers claiming unemployment insurance benefits and not contributing towards the UIF. So in reality, it is a win-win thing. In fact, we cited it when we went to the PIC Commissioner as an example of a good intervention where you have business, labor, government all working together to save jobs, to grow the economy in a transparent and a legal and a rational basis.
Matthew,
and in fact, we also...
Matthew, unfortunately, we have to leave it there. We have some news coming through that we need to go to. Matthew Parks from Cosatu there.